So I'm going to welcome Dr. Dennis Toichkin, and Dennis has been a very good friend and researcher over years. So I have been working with Dennis for a period of time and for a couple of years, and as well, I've written articles for his books he wrote and journals, and also the conference he organized. First, I'm going to ask about Dennis, so he introduces himself, what exactly he does, and about his research and books. Then from here we start. Okay, Dennis, I give you the floor, please. Go ahead.
Okay, hello, nice to hear you, nice to see you, Manuchegar, and thank you for this opportunity. Actually, I am Ukrainian scientist, and I work in the Institute of History of Ukraine, National Academy of Science of Ukraine. This is the largest institute of national history in Ukraine at all. And you see, in this institute, we have a small division of this auxiliary historical discipline that included heraldry, numismatic, and other paleography and other such discipline, and history of weapon as well. So in Ukraine, it's not very developed well, but you see, anyway, I am almost the single specialist in history of weapon in Ukraine at all. You see, we have only few such scientists who study weapon in Ukraine. And actually, this conference was that I organized is very important because from year to year this study of weapon become more and more popular, and more people, more collectors of ancient weapon want to know something about weapon and want some science, some scientific researches. So it's such conference on the history of weapon was very actual in Ukraine, and we started it in 2014 actually. But as for me, yes, I got my PhD on history of weapon. I studied especially Ukrainian weapon because nobody before me studied it well. So you see, I have two books of myself. So this was my first book.
Yes.
Kozak saber, you see, about cold weapon of Ukrainian Cossacks.
Could you please show us the jacket again? Can you put it a bit back?
You see, it's
Yes.
like a mirror. You see, maybe it's...
Yes, no, I can see it, no problem.
Yes,
Very
yes.
good.
And another one that was published in 2014. So you see, it's about cold weapon again. It was made on materials of largest weapon collection of Ukrainian museums, and largest private collections as well. So all of this about Ukrainian weapons, but you see, it was no specific Ukrainian types because Ukraine got independence only during few periods, few short periods. So it's most like the international weapon. It's like the crossroad of European weapon and Eastern weapon. So I have to be a specialist in Eastern weapon, Turkish Ottoman weapon, and Persian as well, Persian weapon, and Western European weapon as well, in period of Renaissance and early modern times as well. So this is my specialty.
Oh, very interesting. Just before we go ahead, I mean, I have both of your books. This is my personal self-interest, are you planning to have them translated into English one day? I've been
Yes,
asking this
yes.
question.
I have already started this process. You see, now I translate in form of few articles
Yes.
and publish articles and other articles, and then I plan to translate completely this book,
Yes.
and this will be resolved.
Okay. Could you please, before we go into history of weapons in Ukraine, which is I think everyone would be very interested, and about the history of Cossacks. Before we go to Cossacks, let me ask you something. It's a very personal question. I would like to ask you, why did you become interested in weapons, historical weapons?
It's, you see, it's not easy to reply because I interested in weapons since students' time. Since students' time, you see, when Soviet Union collapsed in the beginning of in 1991, so in Soviet Union, all these martial arts and all these things were banned, completely banned. You see.
What was the reason they were banned?
Because they're afraid of such things, they're afraid of martial arts, they tried to turn every people to like a walker, nothing more, you see. Nobody had to develop such thing that that could frighten the authority, because if you practice martial art, maybe next day you will organize a kind of revolution or protest or something else.
Oh, I see.
Only Soviet militia was allowed to practice this martial arts, and many instructors, many people who wanted to practice martial arts, they had to go to work in militia, in Soviet police, you see.
Yes, I understand that.
So
Okay.
when Soviet Union collapsed, here it was like the real boom, real flourish of all this martial arts, and almost everyone practiced this martial arts in that time. You see, I was very young, and I just finished Soviet army and started to study in university. So it was very popular here, and I also started to practice wushu, kung fu, and jujutsu,
Yes.
the Japanese martial arts. So it was very interesting for me, as not only in practice but also the theory, how it developed in China, in Japan.
Yes.
So even my work in university, it was also dedicated to China martial arts. You see,
Wow.
I tried to study how such weapon practice, how it could be combined with religious, with Buddhism and other absolutely peaceful religions. You see how
Yes.
they integrated one to another with another. So it was very interesting for me, and this was start for me of studying of weapon, see, of weapon itself.
Beautiful. Okay, and then let us go to Cossacks. And you talked about the history of Cossacks and weapons of Cossacks in Ukraine. Could you please tell us who are Cossacks? I'm sure many people don't know that in our channel. Could you explain who Cossacks are, or where?
You see, Cossacks. It's not easy to explain in a few words, but maybe we can. If you know samurai in Japan,
Yes.
so Cossacks was something like this. You see,
Okay.
it was military estate of Ukraine.
Okay.
military state of Ukraine.
Yeah.
And many of them were noble, and many of them were just simple people. But you see, Ukraine for many years was a part of a huge state that had a name Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth.
Yes.
Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. It was like a union of three countries. Lithuania, that was much larger in that times, Poland, and Ukraine itself. And on the top was Polish king. And of course, he had army, but he had no regular army.
Yes.
Only regular hired army, small army.
Yes.
But when they decided to go to war, they declared war and started to form armies. And you see, in Ukraine, it was on the south part of Ukraine was the border, huge border, huge steppe area.
Yes.
And this was undefined line of border, and all the time Crimean Tatars invaded the border, invaded Ukraine.
Yes.
So government could do nothing against them. And because of this, many ordinary people went to the front line, and they got the name Cossacks. Cossacks, it's you see, it's like a free people who lived in this wild steppe area, and who all the time battle, struggle against Crimean Tatars and Ottomans. So later they organized real fortress in this area, and later they became the real military state, and Polish king had to recognize all of them as independent state. And much later, this Cossacks divided into two parts. Part of them lived in large cities and obeyed all orders of government, and another part, irregular part, lived in these wild areas, in this fortress, and were completely uncontrollable. They organized, they lived how they wanted to, and they did what they want, actually. From time to time, they were hired, but in free time, they organized small wars by themselves, you see. Mostly not wars, but raids against Ottomans, you see. So it was kind of undeclared war.
Yes.
And many times Ottoman sultans asked Polish king to do something with that Cossacks, but completely unsuccessful. So Polish king preferred to hide these wild Cossacks and used them in his war. You see.
Okay. Okay. Before we, just to for myself, you know, when you go to Bushi or Bushido, Bushi is warrior in Japan, or samurai, someone who serves. What does Kozak mean? Does it have a meaning in your language?
Yes, it's many discussion about this word, Kozak.
Yes.
Actually, the most common, like freeman Freeman,
Ah,
the most close to this name.
interesting. Freeman means a man who is not bound to anything, right?
Another mean is like robber.
Okay.
Robber.
Okay. Robber as well. Okay.